Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to Literary Ladies Podcast. It's been a hot minute.
It
So,
had.
me and KP are back. We had started, what book did we start?
We started Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
Yes. And we both decided that we were just going to skip that book. We read it, and it's not that it's bad, it's just like really hard to get through. And it was taking up a lot of time, and normally we're like pretty good with getting through books, but this one was just like not
Yeah.
it.
I was talking to my friend last night and I was saying how I could not get through that book. And she said, "Do you think it's because of the state that we're in that you want to read a book where you can like escape into the story and you don't want to read like a memoir?" And I said, 2000%. I think
Yeah,
that's why I couldn't get through that book.
yeah, that's probably pretty accurate. Also for me, it was definitely just like having the physical book that if I was listening to it, I probably would have been done with it and it would have been fine. But like actually sitting down to read for me is a task because I just like to do other things while I'm listening to the book.
Yeah, I
um,
hear you. I got you.
So I did post on our Instagram, but the book we switched to was Last Girl Gone by J.G. Hetherton. I found this book because Audible has this new feature where they have a bunch of free audiobooks, and it has a bunch of current authors and stuff on there. And this was one of the books that was on there. So if you have Audible, it's free. Check it out. Woo!
Good
So
for me.
KP was gracious enough to write up all of our questions this time.
This is what I do now. I quit my day job. I just write questions.
That's fine. So we'll go through those. We'll do our regular who would we cast as these characters and announce our next book. So I will read to you the first question because I've been talking way too much.
Should we do like a little summary?
Oh, yeah, we could do a summary. Go ahead. I'll let
I
you.
can do a summary.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So this book, Last Girl Gone, is about this reporter named Laura who moves back to her small hometown in North Carolina, and all these kidnappings start happening with all these little girls, and she's trying to like write the story and figure out what happened and become like a cop but still be a reporter.
Yep, pretty much. So our first question, when we are introduced to Laura, she is freshly back in town from being a big time reporter in Boston. What do you make of this career change without knowing anything?
So, obviously something happened in Boston that forced her to move home. And like, I understand people make mistakes, but she like moved back to her hometown and everyone was like, shun the non-believer, and like was acting really not very nice to her. So I was like, wow, this girl went from being like a big time reporter in Boston to having to like move home and like kind of go down a couple of notches in her
Right.
career, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I honestly thought that she was the little girl from the beginning of the book and that she came back because she had finally gotten away and then like had this life in Boston and then came back because of something with her mom. And yeah, did they ever tell us like what actually happened to her in Boston?
Yes. So she was writing a report about the Catholic Church scandals of child sexual abuse.
Mm.
And I think she said that she ended up like attacking a priest on the streets.
Oh yes, I remember this now that you're talking about it.
Yeah, which, you know, you do you, boo. If he did the bad thing, you do you.
Yep.
So yeah, she ended up having to move home and everyone like found out about what happened and she was super shamed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know why I like correlated them to being the same person. I mean, it could have been a big reveal at the end or something, but just especially, and I'm going to talk about this in a few questions, but um, their moms were like exactly the same, where they like hated men. So I was like, oh, maybe it's the same person.
I mean, don't we all? But,
Mhm.
you know. All right, question numero 2. Laura has a feud with Smythe for the big story about the missing girls. Who do you think deserved the story? Why or why not? What did you make of their work relationship?
So Smythe was just a douchebag all around. I definitely think she deserved the story because she was the one who like wrote the initial story about it. So I feel like she should have been the one to continue it. And I guess she pretty much did because the other guy only got the one story right. But I feel like they did a lot of big things with his character where he like attacked her in her office and stuff. And then he just kind of up and disappeared. And at one point, I actually thought he might have been the killer. And they kind of just like did away with his character. They're like, oh, he moved away to a different place. And I was like, okay.
So I agree. For like half of the book, I thought he was the killer because I was like, there's no way, like, I don't know. It just made sense in my head. But I think she also deserved the story, but I get where they were coming from, that he was the mayor's son and he knew everyone in town and he was like
Right.
this trustworthy man. But the amount of like sexism that happened from him, I was like, no, no. Like, this is not how things happen. And like, no, and
Yeah.
not even him, like even her boss like was so sexist, and I was like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah. Also, you guys have no idea how many times I texted KP, like, I know who the killer is. At least like 4.
yeah. And I was like behind you in the book, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get there. But then I also like thought I knew who the killer was, and it
I
was
know who it
never.
is. Just kidding. Now I know who it is. And then I was like, wrong every time. It was great.
I did get a lot of text saying, I know who the killer is, and I'm like, okay.
Keep it to yourself, ma'am.
Okay.
So Laura is dating the town cop Frank in the beginning of the book. Do you think she was only dating him to get information on the case?
2000%. So her relationship with him was so frustrating to me because I feel like he actually liked her,
Mhm.
and the like her emotions towards him were just like, she didn't like show any emotion until he died. And then she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's my fault." And I'm like, literally this whole time this man's like sleeping with you and dating you, and you're just like blah blah, blah, and then he dies and all of a sudden you have a heart. Like,
Yeah,
what?
pretty much.
I
Yeah.
don't understand.
At first, like I thought that they were like real because she kind of got offended when someone insinuated she was only with him like for this story. And also I just don't understand why this grown woman who like has her own job is living at home with her mom, who
Correct.
like, because like that was a big hindrance on the relationship too, because he was never allowed to go there or call, and I didn't understand why she
I
was
feel
there.
like that was an excuse for her though, to be like, oh, like you can't come over because I live with my mom and she doesn't know I'm dating you.
Yeah, that's
Like,
true.
I feel like I would do that if I just wanted to like it to be secret. I'd be like, oh, you can't come to my house, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
All right, on to the next. Laura is very eager to work with the new FBI agent in town, Timinsky, on the case, but he can't be on record for any of the information. What did you make of their relationship?
Okay, I really liked their relationship, and they like slowly became pretty good friends, I think, and kind of relied on each other for information, and it benefited both of them. But I wish, because he kind of went away too. Like he like showed her the cabin, and then he was kind of gone, and she was just on her own. But I kind of wish some like romantic thing grew from their relationship, like some, or not even, it didn't even have to be romantic, just some like stronger bond than that, you know?
Yes. I I agree with you that you said before we started the podcast that you don't understand how this was like written, and I also don't understand how this book was written because I feel like a lot of the puzzle pieces don't line up.
Yeah.
And this was another like relationship that just disappeared, and you're like, okay, like what happened to him?
Right.
What happened to that guy? I thought it was just like a weird relationship. I don't think he added much value to the story.
Yeah.
Like, I just think, like, okay, in the end, if he was the killer, I'd be like, okay, this all makes sense. But like, he just disappeared, and I'm like, okay, like,
He went back to his FBI job after they found Hobbs or whatever the guy's name was.
yeah, like he wasn't a very good FBI agent because she tried to go with him with the additional information, and he's like, I can't be involved. And it's like, well, sir, you're playing it safe.
Yeah.
Not very good.
um So, Laura has a very toxic relationship with her mother when she comes back in town. Why do you think they didn't get along, and was it ever actually explained?
So I didn't understand this relationship. Her mom was just super mean to her.
It's her mother.
Like, oh, sure, but like, I wish at the end, like, we would have found out why her mom treated her the way that she did.
Mhm.
But I feel like that was just left in a questionable state. What do
Yeah.
you?
I mean, I already said this, how that's why I kind of thought that they were the same person, because the moms acted so similarly, where they just hated men. And I think the only real connection I can make with the rest of the book is that it allowed her to connect with Jasmine more.
Mm-hmm.
And because they both had that similar experience, and maybe that's why Jasmine picked her to be the one to like get all the mail and stuff like that, like that she
Yeah,
sent.
I agree.
But that's about as much as I can get from that connection.
I would have liked to see more of her like relationship with her mother and like the backstory of it. Because it was interesting when it was happening. It just didn't make a lot of sense
Right.
in the book.
You're like, well, where's your father? Is this the reason that she hates men? I don't know.
I hope the
Okay.
author does not listen to our podcast because, like, every question, I'm like, this did not make sense. This was a terrible chapter. Like,
But I mean, like, I guess I'll say this later when I rate it, but like, it wasn't a bad book. It was just when I was really like thinking about it that I was like, oh, a lot of this doesn't make sense.
yeah, a
But
lot
I
of it
mean,
didn't make sense,
it's fine.
but it's cool. All right. The next question. Laura has an interesting relationship with her therapist, Jasmine, and relies heavily on her. Do you think this was a healthy relationship? When did it get too far?
So I think their like therapist client relationship was good until she agreed to meet with Laura to talk about this case, and they like got drunk or whatever. But it's so weird thinking back, knowing the end of the book, because you're like, okay, she sat with her and like gave her professional opinion on herself as a kidnapper of children, and like has no remorse for it. Just
Yeah.
continues to do it. So yeah, that, I mean, it definitely ended up not being a healthy relationship. But what did you think about it?
Um, so yeah, I think that like the first red flag was when she agreed to like go out with her and get drinks.
Hmm.
Because a therapist would never do that. They would never see you outside of the workplace.
Unless it was an accident.
Unless I see you at Publix, because I follow you there.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
kidding, I kid. So yeah, I just thought that that was weird. I did like feel like they had a really genuine friendship though until the end of the book. Like I liked
Yeah.
their dynamic, but I mean, it's all a lie in the end.
Right. Because at the end of the book, you're like, oh my gosh, yay. Like Jasmine came and saved her. Like she's going to be fine. Nope, she's not going to be fine.
She was not fine.
Anyways. The night at the cabin when Laura and Frank were trying to catch the killer, Laura said she saw the figure run, even though it was later revealed that the killer was disabled. What did you think at this point?
Um, So I thought that someone was definitely working with Hobbs. And I mean, I feel like every person she was telling, like, Hobbs could, like, not walk. Hobbs was disabled. They were like, "Oh, but, like, maybe he wasn't." Like, that's not something that, like, just changes overnight. Like,
They were like, oh, maybe his power wheelchair can traverse these mountainous hills to this cabin in the forest.
and it's like, no, I don't think someone, like, in an electric wheelchair can, like, kidnap a child and cut their ear off and then leave them in a field.
Right,
So I was like, yep, it definitely wasn't him. And like they set that up so it would look like it was him.
right. Yeah, I remember specifically her saying like, oh, they seem to be floating, like when they were following Frank into the cabin.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I just figured like they had the wrong person. But then right after that, they were like, oh, it was the right person, and back in the 1980s and all this other stuff. So it was kind of cool that there was multiple people, and it was like just continuing the legacy of this former serial killer, the kid. So that was kind of a cool part of the book. But
Yeah. It was just like, I don't know. It's a little crazy town.
was a little crazy town.
All right. What was the turning point when you started to figure out who the killer was? And did you have hope that any of the girls were still alive by the end of the book?
I mean, yeah, I thought that a million people were the killer. Like I said before, I texted you so many
Yeah.
times. I thought it was Smythe. I thought it was the man who drove off with the girl in the beginning, which one of them was. So I'll give myself credit for that. And then I thought it was the son that the Mildred had dress up like the girl. And then it was finally Jasmine. So um, that just I don't think I had a turning point until it was actually revealed, because I had no idea that it was her. um and the only girl I figured would probably still be alive was the most recent one that they took, that was friends. It was one of, oh my gosh, she probably
Teresa.
took her while she was at therapy. What the heck? Oh, I hate that.
Winner, winner. I think that's what happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's the only one I thought might have still been alive.
So I just thought throughout the whole book, I thought it was weird that they kept referring to the killer as he or him. Like, I'm like, you can't just like assume the killer's a man. And halfway through, I was like, maybe it's a woman, but I
Mm.
didn't know what woman it would be. I was like, maybe it's her mom,
Oh,
but it was not.
no.
But I was like, yeah, maybe it's a woman. I just don't know who that would be. And then I figured Teresa was alive because her ear was freshly cut off,
True.
bent over. So, and like, you're not necessarily going to die if someone cuts your ear off. So I thought she was still alive, but I didn't know.
And she was.
And she
She
was.
was with the nuns. um, so when the killer is revealed to be Jasmine, what were your thoughts?
I was shook. So when she when Jasmine showed up at the racetrack, I was like, "Oh my god, it's Jasmine." Like this, and even when she was trying to pretend like, "Oh, like I'm here because you called the police and like they called me." I was like, "Nope, you're the killer. Don't get into the car, Laura. Jasmine's going to kill you." And the whole time I was like, "Oh my gosh, this all makes sense. Like you've been telling Jasmine everything about this case, every detail, and Jasmine's the killer."
Hmm.
So that was no bueno for Laura.
Yeah, when she was talking about the truck pulling up, I was trying to remember if they had talked about it before. And I felt like I remembered them saying that Frank had a truck. So I was like, oh, was Frank not really dead? And it's actually like him and he's there. Like I figured whoever it was, whoever the killer was probably in the truck. But then when it was Jasmine, I didn't think that anymore. And then she was arguing with her about staying or going, and the whole thing, like, until she like basically attacked her in the car, I had no idea. It was wild. This was a wild book.
That whole thing was crazy in the car because all I could picture was them like sitting there and Jasmine like leaping and like attacking, and it just like scared me.
Yeah. It was also super weird that it wasn't. So the mom made the son that she had dress up like a girl because she always wanted a daughter. And so I really thought that Jasmine was going to be that son. But then you found out that the son had been killed and it was a different girl she had adopted. So that whole part was like, what?
That like to the end of the book, I was like, okay, Jasmine's the son, and she just got like a sex change.
No.
And this all makes sense. And then they show up at the orphanage, and I'm like, what's happening? Like, it was very confusing.
Yeah, there had to be like one final plot twist. So as usual, we're going to go through and say who we would cast as these characters if they were in a movie. So who do you want to start off with?
Let's start with Laura. Let's start with the main character.
Sounds good. Who did you? I will let you know. Most of the people that I picked are all in their 40s.
Oh,
Or above. I didn't pick any like young people.
so I picked people. Let me see. I picked like a good mix of people.
Okay.
So for Laura, I picked Allison Brie.
Let me get my Google ready because I have
That's
to
what I'm
look up these
doing.
people. Allison Brie. Who is that? Oh, okay. I did think that she was like probably a brunette in the beginning. That's a really good choice. Yeah, I could totally see that. The person I picked was Sarah Paulson.
Ooh, okay. I could see that. I
Yeah.
love her too. She's brilliant.
Especially if she had that like brown hair like she had in one of the American Horror Stories. I was like,
Yeah,
that would totally be her. And then you didn't do Frank, did you?
I did.
Oh, okay. Who did you pick for Frank?
I picked Charlie Carver, Carver.
Oh, he's one of the twins from Teen Wolf.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I can see that. I picked, let me find his name, David Harbour. He's the cop from Stranger Things.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Oh, and he was a cop. How weird. I didn't even think about that. Did you do anyone for Smythe?
Yes.
Okay.
I did Colin Jost.
Oh, I did Colin Farrell. I thought you were going to say the same as me.
I was like, wait, this is too crazy. Jost.
Okay.
I was like, who looks douchey? And who looks like they would do this?
Aw. And let's see, I also did Mildred and I did Jasmine.
So let's go through Jasmine because I did her too.
Okay, I picked, I don't know how to pronounce her first name, Famke Janssen, Famke. She played, she was an X-Men as Jean Grey. I don't know if you've seen X-Men.
I have not. Oh, I know who she is.
Okay.
Yes.
I probably butchered her name.
That.
Who did you pick?
I picked Lily Rabe, Rabe.
That sounds familiar.
She's
okay. Oh, and that would be perfect with Sarah Paulson.
Yeah.
That's funny. And then I did Mildred too, and I picked Meryl Streep for Mildred.
Okay, I can see that.
Because didn't she do like Into the Woods? Was
Yep.
Meryl Streep in Into the Woods?
I think so.
And she was like the... I'm sorry, I'm just Googling a picture. Yeah, and she's like the witch or whatever. Yeah,
I think she is the witch.
Yeah.
Into the Woods.
So great. Excellent cast. If you would like more casting ideas for this upcoming movie, let us know. And then what would you give this book out of 5 stars?
We're gonna like go real low on this one. So I liked it. It grabbed my attention at the end, but the middle was like real rough for me. So I would say like a 3.2.
Oh my gosh, you went even higher than I was gonna do.
Yeah,
You're like, we're gonna go real low. It's a 3.
it's a 3.
Yeah, I did like this book. I think I dislike it more after kind of analyzing it and going through it and answering these questions and realizing like, oh, a lot of this doesn't add up and a lot of questions are still unanswered. So I would probably give it like a 3. No, I would give it like a 2.8 probably out of 5.
Okay, that's
And
fair.
what did you give it?
A 3.2.
Okay. I keep forgetting to do our little averages. It's just for us, but I like to know. Um,
I think that's like a 2.95.
look at you doing math.
It's probably wrong.
But anyways, thanks for listening. I hope you guys check this book out. It's free if you have Audible, so it's not too terrible of a listen. If you have any suggestions for us or want us to read something particular, email us at literaryladiespod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram. I try to update regularly with what books we're doing and post funny things sometimes if I remember.
It's great.
Thank you. KP always watches them.
I do. I like all of them. I'm like, oh, my podcast posted again.
What did my podcast post today? Oh, okay.
Here it is.
Then the next book that we picked, this was KP's pick, is One to Watch by Kate Stayman London. It is about a plus size fashion blogger who gets chosen to go on a dating reality show. Is that an accurate synopsis?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, so we both have just started that book. It's pretty good so far, and that's what our next podcast is going to be on. So if you want to check that out so you can listen along and answer the questions with us next time, do it.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Well, we will see you. Sorry.
Our next podcast might be live.
It
IRL.
It could be live and IRL because we are having a little New Year's Eve hang with our friends that it's going to be COVID safe. Don't worry, everybody.
Very COVID safe.
We're planning it out appropriately.
Don't worry about us. I know you're like really worried, but don't be worried about us.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you everyone again for listening. Make sure you give us a rating where you listen to your podcasts. I don't know if Spotify does it, but I know Apple Podcast does. So leave us a review there if you want. And make sure you listen for our next episode.
Woo!
Bye.
Bye.